Okay, welcome everybody to this workshop. And I just would like to point out that I think that you're very lucky because this is going to be by far the best workshop. The other three workshops will be completely uninteresting. This one will be very, very interesting. And it's really not because of me or Pio. It's because of the fantastic panel that we got here. So very welcome. And Pio, please introduce us.
To what we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the theme, I hope everyone is aware of that, is lessons learned, what entrepreneurs and investors should know about each other. So the whole idea here is to have kind of an open and interactive discussion. I don't know if you could have a non-interactive discussion between you and us and the panel. Preferably a keyword here is honesty. If or when you put up questions, don't hesitate to be a little bit provocative. Here you have both entrepreneurs and investors. So take the chance to put up the questions that you wanted to ask. One issue of order here is that we have to wrap this up at 5:15. And the reason is that the buses leave from here at 5:30 outside the main entrance. And we really have to stop. No matter how fun this is, we have to stop at 5:15. Okay? I wanted to put up a couple of questions for you. How many here are investors? A few of you. How many here are entrepreneurs? Okay, a little bit more than investors. How many here are not investors and not entrepreneurs? What are you? Okay. How many here are both investors and entrepreneurs or have an entrepreneurial background? Okay, interesting. So a few investors who have been entrepreneurs or maybe still are entrepreneurs. Okay, so.
Yeah, like I said, we have a fantastic panel here, and I'd like to start to introduce. Here we have Laurel Bowden. She is an investment manager and partner at Greylock Ventures. You're in London right now, I think, or Israel?
That's right,
Israel?
London.
Both, perhaps? Or
mostly London.
Mostly London, okay. Were we supposed to take a turn? No, we weren't. Okay. So, and we also have Patrick, who run a very interesting startup, Replisaurus, and has now moved on to other exciting stuff, Wave Power.
Yep.
And we have Victor, who is at Klarna. Anyone who hasn't heard about Klarna here? I think everyone knows what Klarna does, right? We have Staffan Helgesson, who is investment manager and partner at Creandum. And we have Nikolaj Wadström, who is both entrepreneur and investor, I would say, in Silicon Valley, but with a Swedish background and helping Swedish companies to actually get established in the Valley. So we have a very nice mix here. We have 2.5 entrepreneur and we have 2.5 investor. And we're really going to dwell on sort of the issues relating how can we work together? How can we actually make the best of the relationship between an entrepreneur and an investor? And what should investors really know and understand about what's going on inside the heart and brains of entrepreneurs? And what should entrepreneurs understand about how venture capitalists actually are working? So we have given 3 to 5 minutes to each in the panel to sort of dwell a little bit on this task. And after that, we will have a discussion where we will drill a little bit deeper into some of these questions. And hopefully you will be very active as an audience, like entrepreneurs you are, right? Okay, so we start with Laurel, please.
So the question that Raoul asked me, he said to me, could I give 3 bits of advice to entrepreneurs, giving them some background or insight into VCs? And you think, well, that's an easy question, but it's easy to come up with 10 things. It's not so easy to come up with 3. So I sat down and I thought, well, what if I was giving my best friend, he had just come up with an idea, had maybe a couple of founders, and was trying to figure out, what his approach to VCs, what would I say? So the first thing, which might be surprising to you, I'd say, well, make sure you actually want money from a venture capitalist. Firstly, it depends on the stage of the company. And that might be, you've got a couple of founders, you've got an idea, you can raise up to, say, $1 million, get going, build a product, start selling. You might not need VCs. It takes a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of thought about who you want. And actually, with this in mind, Greylock, we've established a seed fund where we can write very small checks because not all companies are ready to go and get venture money or full venture money, say $2 to $5 million. Secondly, there's some entrepreneurs. I recently met a company, super interesting company. We would love to have given them a term sheet, but the founders themselves wrote a $5 million check. And I said, well, I'd love to be part of that. And they said, well, we don't really need you. And I said, okay, we'll come back once you've got close to spending that money. So I think that's the first thing. Make sure that you want venture or that you need venture money at that point. The second point, which is also going to sound, I want it to sound positive, but remember, when whoever you take money from, it's irreversible. So you can have a founder, another founder, and you can even get rid of that founder. You definitely can get rid of employees. Your venture capitalist is with you for a long time. And that's a good thing, but it also means you need to think very hard about it. And then the final thing is a lot of entrepreneurs like to focus on the deal. Oh, am I getting the right amount of money? Am I getting the right terms? Am I getting the right valuation? Run around, shop it to another VC. Actually, what matters, I think, are 2 things. One, I do think brand matters. And brand can be brand in the local country you're in. It can be a global brand, but brand does matter. It helps you recruit people. It helps you helps you finance in the next round. It helps you be part of a greater network. And secondly, the specific partner you're getting on board, I think, is crucial. This is a marriage, and as I mentioned before, you don't get divorced, or not lightly. So I think it's really important you think about who you're getting on board, how you're going to work with that person. Is that somebody that you're going to be able to go through ups and downs with? So those were my 3 bits of advice.
All right. So I try to continue there. As an entrepreneur, it's, as you said, very important. It is a marriage. You will spend a lot of time together. You do want to work well together. And there are many things, of course, that you need to have kind of a common view on. A few things that I thought about that I think is especially important is that let's assume you make a major investment. You have a big capital injection. You get a lot of hype in your company. All by a sudden, there's a lot of people available in the market who get your attention. You get a lot of big companies, super CVs in. There's a lot of choices of people you can work with. And there's some really tough choices there to make to decide who are the best people that will work best with your team and will work well with a founder and will fit the VCs in their mind for what are the next phases we're going to go through in the company. And there is a saying that you can never hire too big, and because the company will grow with the people you hire, and that is absolutely true. But I would add to that you can never hire people with too much heart and too much loyalty to the project and the company as well, which I found maybe is even more important in the end. So how you select the people together is one very important thing to agree on. The other thing that I found also is where in the world do you build and how do you make efficient development? I'm sure that matters a little bit depending on what type of company you're building. I've been running some fairly complex industrial development of big tools where there was a pretty heavy assets involved. And it's very tempting to go asset light and you outsource a lot of your development, which generally is a good thing in startups. But one thing you need to agree with your investors on also is how do you make sure you can keep things together to get all the threads tied into a product once you start outsourcing a lot of things. I found myself in the end jetting around between Kista, Grenoble, Geneva, Eindhoven, and a lot of places basically constantly, and always being 1 or 2 days in the same place, trying to get all the engineers delivering one product, doing one thing together, and that also can kill a lot of efficiency. So it's an important thing to find the right people, agree on building critical mass in a few locations is a learning that I've been doing. Not against outsourcing and working with a lot of partners, but it needs to be kept together. Finally, the most important thing is still that it's people who share a pretty common view of the world with you, that you just like to spend a lot of time with, having fun together with. It is kind of a marriage. You will spend a lot of time together. And I mean, especially as an entrepreneur, this is your baby, this is your project. By definition, investors, they have several partners, they have several companies working with. For you, it's very important to find the right one.
Okay, thanks. Staffan, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I'm not going to add advice at this point in time. I may come back to that in a while, but I wanted to comment on an evolution that I've seen the last 10 years, which I think is pretty interesting. And I think it starts with the fact that I think historically, investors have known more about entrepreneurs than entrepreneurs have known about investors. And I think that's it's pretty given, because we meet several hundreds of companies every year, but an entrepreneur, he may fundraise, I don't know, every 2 years or so, and then he perhaps meets 5, 10 or 15 investors. Plus the fact that some of the investors are actually ex-entrepreneurs. So I think historically that has given the investors the upper hand in the discussions between entrepreneurs and investors. But I think that's changed, and I think that's changed in a really big way. And why is that changed? Well, I think it's changed because there's some fundamental changes to the industry that most of us are in, which is the tech industry. So a lot of more people are online. I think it was, I can't remember, but 50 million people 10, 12 years ago, and it's 2.5 billion people today. There are platforms where you can go global in pretty much an instant. Everyone is connected. All these factors make the price much, much bigger these days. And the price today is often creating a global winner. And if you're sitting on that potential global winner, your negotiation power with the investors is much stronger. So 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of the power, plus the fact that we had the cash, was on the investor side. And now it's changing quite dramatically, so that the best entrepreneurs, obviously this doesn't go for everyone, but the best entrepreneurs, if they are skillful, they can actually play the investors out and get the best of that situation. And what should those entrepreneurs do? Well, I think they should do exactly what we do on them. They should take references. They should see, how successful we've been. They should see what type of pressure we're having from our investors in turn. Are we in for a short win or the long-term win? How is it to work with that specific partner, etc., etc. So I think this is not necessarily the fact for all entrepreneurs, but for a increasing amount of entrepreneurs, the odds are if not all in their favor, it's a more level playing field. So that I think is something that you should think of when approaching investors. And then we can talk more about the dynamics later on in the discussion.
Okay, Victor, you have a story.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a sort of a continuation of what Staffan just said. So, I was looking at the proportion of the investors here versus the entrepreneurs, and there's almost as many investors as entrepreneurs. And that gives you an insight that you're the scarce resource here. There's plenty of money to go around if you have that concept that you think is going to be groundbreaking. And as an entrepreneur, of course, you have that belief in your concept. So I want to share a story, an anecdote that we had, because I think my main advice if you decided to take VC money is to don't be afraid to make. As a first-time entrepreneur, it's easy to get sort of starstruck. You meet these like billion-dollar people with CVs that range back from before you were born, and you're like, you sort of feel honored to be in their presence. So you're sort of afraid to make demands, and especially as a first-time entrepreneur. So back in 2010, we were busy building our business, but there was a rumor going around that we were looking for money. So all these VCs started calling us, and we realized then that we could probably raise a considerable amount of cash and propel our business even faster forward. So we met all these VCs, and at one point somehow we came in contact with Sequoia, and one of their main partners, Michael Moritz, met us in London. And we were sort of starstruck, and we sort of realized that we had a connection. Thought that was great. But then we slipped back into the operations and focused on the business, and stopped for a while taking up the calls from the VCs because we wanted to focus on the business. And at that point, they started calling even more. And once, I think Sequoia and another partner of theirs got in contact with us on a Friday afternoon after having to try to reach us all week. He was like, he was sure that we were signing a term sheet with someone else. So he was like, would you have time to meet in Stockholm on Monday? And we were like, oh, they're in San Francisco, so if they're here, of course we could meet. So we met them on Monday, and he gave this incredible pitch about us being the next Google and PayPal, which Sequoia founded earlier. And we thought that sounded great, and we were excited, but still, if we really were Google, why didn't they send Michael Moritz? If they really wanted to invest that bad. So without knowing that we were actually quite bold, we asked them, so if we really want Google, why isn't Michael Moritz here? And we didn't know then that he had flown 20 hours to get there to a 1-hour meeting and then would fly 20 hours back. But actually that bold and sort of stupid question paid off, because they called back 2 days earlier and said, if we get to invest, we'll put Michael Moritz on the board. So it paid off, and it made a lot of difference to us, because I think it's been important to have his backing, have his attention, and his experience from being on the board of PayPal and many other successful companies, and also having a partner which really has a strong position within the firm. It gives you a shorter time to decision, and that he can speak for the firm when he says something. So it's really, really important. But if we would have known, we probably wouldn't have been daring to be that bold.
Well, did you hear that? This is. Everybody's talking about marriage and sort of being a little bit difficult to catch, and sort of. To me, it sounds a little bit like the French flirting game here. But well, I don't know. Anyway, are things differently in the Valley?
They are. So I was. This might become a very boring panel, but I'm going to say the same things, like, pick your partner, and it's really a partnership. You need to pick the right people to work with. But I'm trying to put a little bit different twist, a Valley twist to it. So in Silicon Valley, the investor ecosystem is very vibrant, and it's really an ecosystem from the get-go until, the really, big growth money to, really take on the whole world. And I would say, so I'll just iterate some of the thoughts around what's been said here. Like, it's really important to pick your investors as partners, what you do, and do the same due diligence. When working on Prezi, Jack Dorsey said something really smart when he came on the advisory board. He said, you know how well you vet every employee that you employ in key position in your company? Are you doing the same vetting for the partners that you bring on as investors, the ones that you really can't fire? Right? So that's something to think about, like really, really vet the partners and figure out which partner you want to work with, right? That's the perfect fit in terms of skills, knowledge, and the person you really want to work with, and call their portfolio companies, especially ask a reference to the ones that failed, you know, because that's when you'll know when the tough time comes how the partners will behave. So going beyond that, I think like at every stage as you grow your company, we've been talking about VC partners here, but if we look at the early stages, if you bring on the friends, family, and fools money, you're looking for very different things. These are, you want to find the people that invest in you and maybe not as much in your idea. So at that stage, try to find the people that will stand by you as you pivot the whole thing and try to do something completely different, right? At a later stage, you start to look for different things in your investors as you go through the different stages and different types of investors. So align yourself, what you're looking for, align yourself with the phase you're in and the challenges you're facing at that stage, I think is another take, which I see every day around me in Silicon Valley. And of course, there's a lot more investors that will be the friends and family and fools money over there. Of course, but, yeah.
Okay. Could I make a follow-up question on that one? You touch upon the importance of finding a nice match, you can say, between the entrepreneur and the investor. Could you say something about the kind of common denominator? It's a more question for you as investors. A common denominator between the most successful entrepreneurs that you worked with regarding traits or attitudes or competence, basically. What are, if you boil that down to a few of the most important common denominators, what would you say they are?
A few common denominators, I think, I mean, just thinking on the fly, the entrepreneurs, and I think it's best if I talk personally that I've backed, I mean, all, extremely driven, to the point that I've said to a few of my CEOs, please will you take a holiday? And I'm not sure that that's healthy in the long term, but they, totally driven to build those companies, and sometimes I think even to the detriment of their families, which I don't know if that's necessary, but that's definitely the way they are. They not always do they come from the industry, which that for me was very surprising. I think when I first started investing, you thought, well, the CEO has to know everything. In fact, some of my best CEOs and most successful companies, the CEO, it's a new industry that they've gone into. They clearly have learnt a lot. They've clearly evolved over time. They clearly have become experts in the industry, but they didn't start out like that. They're also people, I think, that are absolutely not afraid to hire. My one CEO said to me, he said, I want to hire the person that frightens me, that they are so much smarter than me in a certain aspect. The minute you see people, and so that suddenly when you look at a company, it started out with 2 founders and a few employees, and 3-4 years down the line, they literally are 6 or 7 just, real, I guess, rock stars. And then finally, I guess, prepared to be bold, bold in terms of, and that doesn't mean being stupid, it doesn't mean not being focused, but be bold in terms of product development, be bold in terms of, it goes back to your point about, which VC you want to get in, be bold in terms of how much money you want to raise, be bold in your views. I think that would be the thinking on the fly.